The latest information and analysis of events from around the world with Basil Valentine on today's News Talk, TNT.
And welcome back to the program for this final section today, Tuesday, the 3rd of September, where Igor Lopatonok can't join us, but Simona Papadopoulos can. And if I'm allowed to make this kind of comment, dare I say it, she's probably a lot more decorative than Igor. But anyway, we are allowed to say what we like here on TNT. Take it as a compliment these days. Everything we say has to be derided as somehow sexist. Anyway, you're in the film, not just producing it.
I'm not producing. I'm not producing the film.
But you're in it.
Interviewer. I'm the interviewer.
Right.
So I'm the one sitting with all the speakers and unfolding the story as it comes.
Okay. Well, please, the floor is yours. Tell our viewers and listeners what that story is.
Thank you so much for having me. First and foremost, as you mentioned, this film's Hunter's Laptop, Requiem from Ukraine, is actually a political documentary produced by Igor Lopatonok. Sean Stone co-directed it in some interviews and had the privilege to be the lead interviewer. So had the opportunity to sit with a number of individuals who had insights in the story surrounding the Hunter laptop back in 2020 and involved in the political turmoil that raised from that. This story, this film is sorry
to interrupt, Simona, but just very quickly, of course, we had the revelation in that letter from Mark Zuckerberg to Congress that the FBI told him that you suppressed all stories about it because it was Russian disinformation. That was not just erroneous; it was a big fat lie deliberately planted. And I said this morning on another program that we really need to find out where that lie originated from. There should be some accountability.
Well, we remember the story of the famous number of signatures to dismiss the story as Russia. Yes. This information and this found involvement also of eminent figures in Congress. Now, why this film is important is not much. Hello, sorry. Can you hear me? I had
fine. It's fine.
Sorry, because I got a call and it's okay. So this is important because this documentary goes far beyond the scandal surrounding Hunter Biden laptop. Actually, it's through this conversation with the whistleblowers like Miranda Devine and key figures like Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon, we reveals a tangled web of political corruption, media manipulation, and also international intrigue. We are actually facing what it's called a case of election interference overall in 2020, when actually this story was suppressed by the media and dismissed as Russian propaganda. But so denying people critical information, access to critical information to make their choice to the election. So when we talk about election interference, here we have Hunter's story coming into place, showing us how dismissing the story as Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and on the other hand, on the institutional side, dismissing the case from the police department without holding the findings in this Hunter laptop of crime and the authors of this crime accountable, it's a prime example of political corruption. So the meaning and the leitmotif of the entire film goes far beyond the physical laptop of Hunter Biden and any scandal surrounding it. It's all about political corruption and that challenge the audience into questioning the weaponization of power and how the weaponization of power affects our democracy.
The weaponization of power and how it affects our democracy. Well, that really is getting to the heart of the matter. What does it tell us about the war in Ukraine and how it came about?
Well, that's actually is not making any specific reference to the war itself, but we have the focus on Ukraine in terms of corruption. So when we look at an Ukraine that is deeply involved in corruption scheme, and particularly Burisma, and the owner of Burisma involvement at the level of government level, and how the United States back on time when Joe Biden was vice president under Obama they interfered with political decision, pushing Poroshenko at the time, corrupted Poroshenko, to fire Shokin, the person in charge of investigating corruption of Burisma, the oil and energy company where Hunter was in the board of administrators. We understand there is a link. We're not helping Ukraine because it's this innocent country attacked by Russia. Ukraine is a deeply corrupted country, and we are investing enormous amount of our tax money to fund a war against Russia through Ukraine. So that's probably the war angle is not talked about directly. But definitely, we have the point. Yes, we clearly have a picture of what corruption is in Ukraine. I also interviewed an Ukrainian politician, which has been sanctioned by the United States, and he also offers important insight in the investigation carried on by Rudy Giuliani and how everybody who has dared to investigate or speak against I would call the Biden regime or Zelensky regime has been affected somehow in terms of political persecution.
Biden's on his way out. Of course, Hunter Biden has been prosecuted for one or two minor misdemeanors, but the follow-up, is there ever going to be any accountability for what's happened?
Well, we are not capable to predict that. Definitely, if we don't change administration, if Trump won't come back into power, we won't see a significant change in the status quo. But definitely, we can help through information, giving people access to uncensored facts that have been denied and twisted to manipulate public opinion. And this is actually the biggest side effect of this disinformation machine.
Trump has described Zelensky as, the world's most successful grifter. He turns up in Washington and goes away with tens of billions of dollars every time. He's now the central figure in Ukraine and continues to want to escalate the war, from what I can tell. Is there anything in the film about his own personal position, his corruption?
Well, we have actually one important element that I would like to anticipate, and you will see unfolding in the film, and actually a speaker from Ukraine that reveals that actually was Zelensky behind the decision in first place to leak the infamous Biden-Poroshenko audio recording. So it was actually first moment collaborating against this corruption, then is which side as soon as balances on the other side of the ocean with the election of Joe Biden took place. So there's definitely a lot of interesting insights. It's a lot of history of Ukraine and the current status of corruption in the country. As I said, we have very insightful speakers, both from the United States and abroad. It's a very informative documentary on both sides to see how actually corruption unfolded, when institutions were colluding to cover up for this corruption. What does it tell us about Ukraine today?
Well, what it tells us is that it's just about the most corrupt country in Europe. Nobody's got any idea where the tens of billions of dollars that the United States has been sending has been going, though there are reports, of course, of the wives and families of top Ukrainian officials buying clothes, cars, and property in Western Europe and generally feathering their nests. I mean, what about the ordinary people of Ukraine? Are they aware of the fact? Do you have any idea of the extent to which they've been taken for a ride by their own leaders?
Well, I think everybody can guess an answer from this question. Of course, there's been like a terrible censorship in Ukraine. We got to the point of trying to ban the Orthodox Church. So we have also this other persecution, trying to limit people's freedom, even when it comes to religious freedom. We are living in we are talking about a country that is everything but democratic. It's not a democracy by any means. And the United States is supporting this country unconditionally in its war against Russia, just to replace its own political game in this geopolitical area.
Well, you've got two undemocratic countries supporting each other then, because the United States is deeply undemocratic these days itself, particularly the so-called Democratic Party, which wants to censor free speech as much as possible, restrict access to ballots, deplatform opposition, and then steal elections. In Ukraine, of course, Zelensky has cancelled the elections, claiming a national emergency. But I hope his position becomes increasingly untenable. Surely it must do in the wake of the imminent collapse of his war effort and the failure of the incursion into Kursk.
Yes, and that's actually talking about political films about Ukraine. I was interviewer also of another film of Igor Lopatonok that is available on Prime Video and was aired in first place on 2021. So a few months before the war took place, and this is actually a very informative documentary as well, because the name is The Everlasting Present, Ukraine 30 Years of Independence, in occasion of the 30 years of independence from the collapse of the Soviet Union, and that's actually helped us walking through the history of modern Ukraine since actually its independence from the Soviet Union, and how the rise of the people's movement affected the current Nazi situation that everybody dismissed as propaganda, but actually it's a reality that we can easily get informed, get knowledge about while we dig into the history. And it's important actually when we talk about Ukraine specifically to dig into the history of Ukraine, its economy, its political, how the United States and in general also the Western world try to exercise some sort of influence in this very geopolitically strategic country in the European continent. So it's since we're going deep into Ukraine, I would like also to mention this other work from Igor Lopatonok, which I also had a chance and opportunity to work as an interviewer, and this is in depth about Ukraine actually. Besides, of course, Is Ukraine on Fire and the Revealing Ukraine with Oliver Stone, which also a very informative documentary as well.
And where can we see all these films? You mentioned Amazon Prime.
Yes, they're all available on Prime Video.
And where can we find your work, Simona? Where can we find the rest of your work?
Yes, you can find it on X. My handle is Simona Mangiante. You can follow me on X, and I post all my work over there as well. So you will find it about the news.
I will follow you as soon as I get my account restored. Might have to.
Good luck.
I'm talking to Elon Musk again on Thursday, Elon's dad. Perhaps he'll be able to help. Thank you so much for joining us at very short notice today, Simona, after Igor couldn't make it. I'm Basil Valentine. Today's Tuesday, the 3rd of September. I'll be back with more great guests, in-depth interviews, the latest news, and yes, my own forthright opinions at the same time tomorrow. I hope you can all join me then. I'm looking forward to it already. Goodbye for now.
If you missed this hour, simply go to episodes at tntradio.live